All right, so I am up on a hill overlooking the ocean here in Pacifica. There's some fog blowing in, so I'm gonna have to work quickly. All right, so here is the scene I'm looking at. I'm not sure how I'm gonna compose this, but I feel like today's kind of a play day. I'm just gonna play around and see what happens. I'm working on a 16 by 20 inch panel today. I think I'll experiment by putting the land kind of low, like this, maybe. I want to make sure that the horizon isn't in the dead center, although I've seen other painters put their horizon in the middle and it still works. But generally speaking, I try to avoid putting it in the middle. There's some kind of tree right here, and then this tree is casting a shadow across a little trail, kind of like that. That is when the sun is out. The sun has gone behind the fog. Being that the sun is coming and going, I'm going to get the shapes in place, and then when the sun comes out, then I will sketch in the shadow shapes and also pay attention to the color that I'm seeing. Once I get the big shapes in place, I start looking for specifics in the shapes. A lot of times with trees or shrubs, I'll just generalize, but today I'm trying to be fairly accurate with the shape or the outline of this tree here, and then I'll do the same with this as well. The composition is really quite simple, and I think that the success of the painting sort of depends on getting these shapes right, just because these trees have a lot of character, or there's a specific look to them, and so I'm sort of enjoying looking carefully at the shapes. All right, here there's actually a little bit of a gap between these two, and then this one here, right here, is smaller than this one. I feel like I haven't quite gotten this shape correct. It sort of sweeps back more like this. All right, I've got a mixture of ultramarine blue, alizarin crimson, and some liquin. And so now I'm gonna darken these shapes here. The darkest portion of the painting is the shadow side of the trees. And I may have lost the light here completely, but that's all right. I sort of expected that. Not when I hiked up the hill. When I was hiking up the hill, it was beautiful, and I thought, oh, this will be great. My only concern was, at that point, was for wind, because it can be really windy up here. But it is not that windy, actually. As for color here, you may be wondering why I'm using a purplish color. And this color I push towards blue. I do like to have purplish or blue colors in my shadows for the trees, instead of making the shadows a dark green. Something I find appealing about having some blue or purple in the dark areas. Okay, and then there is a cast shadow from this tree. And I remember it went all the way out here, and it had sort of an irregular shape to it, which is usually the case. All right, so there are the tree shapes, and then I just kind of quickly sketched some cloud shapes up here. I have completely lost the light, but that's all right. I kind of remember, obviously there were warm greens in the light and then cool greens in the shadows. This little bit of sand out here was obviously a warm in color. All right, starting with the color for the ocean here, using a mixture of phthalo blue, a little bit of ultramarine, and some titanium white. I also added a little bit of burnt sienna to tone down the saturation. I usually do that with my ocean mixtures. I'll add a bit of burnt sienna or alizarin crimson. I'm going to try to leave little bits of the sketch showing around the trees. All right, I've got a green mixture here using phthalo blue, cadmium yellow medium, and a touch of cadmium yellow lemon. keeping the mix thin and still hoping that I may get a bit of sun back so I can check my colors. The spring greens can kind of be a challenge just because they are so saturated. I may actually end up toning down the greens a bit. I think this value is okay. I think I'm gonna need to lighten the value of the ocean, but this is a good starting point. All right, I've mixed up sort of a gray color for the dark portion of the clouds, and I don't want this mixture to be too close to ultramarine because the sky in this portion is going to be ultramarine in color, and I want some separation. And as far as painting clouds go, I don't know, I just start off by looking at the shapes that are there and quickly sketching them in. If I like what I see, I'll keep them, and if not, I will change them. All right, up top I've got a mixture of ultramarine blue and phthalo blue, and I haven't grayed down this mixture at all. I'm going to keep it fairly saturated, going for transparency here, and then it gets closer to a cerulean the lower it goes, adding a little phthalo to the mix and a bit of titanium white as well. I can use some bright spots on the clouds as points of interest, adding some earth color here for the sand. I've got burnt sienna, titanium white, and a bit of cadmium yellow medium, and a bit of phthalo to kind of dull it down a bit. I'm going to erase a little section here for a suggested trail. Maybe just a little bit like that, and then come in here with that color. And I don't want it to be too tidy where it, it's like perfectly connecting. I think that's good enough there. All right, so there is the block in. I do like the composition, although I think this little section's kind of too dramatic and a little bit too high, and I might eliminate this little bit of branch right there. All right, now I'm using a natural bristle flat and number 6 to put on some thicker paint, and I want to leave some of these areas of transparency in here, but I'm realizing the value does need to be quite a bit darker. And there are like branches that kind of cross these sky holes here. And I like to pay attention to where the tree is rooted and maybe suggest a few branches. Yeah, this area is mostly dark. And I remember there are some light areas on the top of the tree. There's a little bit of light in here as well. But this tree is mostly dark, and then this one here has a dark pattern like this on, kind of like that on the bottom, and then the top is lighter. But if I remember correctly, the light portion of the tree is darker than the grass, so I want to pay attention to that. Using this large brush sort of keeps me out of trouble. I do want to make these shapes as accurate as possible, but I still want to focus on simple shapes and not get too complicated with things here. I'm debating whether or not to lighten these distant plants. I don't think I'm going to, because they appear to be quite dark. Actually, that should go more like this. And I'm going with a sort of blue-greenish color here to start, to add some green to the shadow areas. I do want to leave some of the purple mixture, and then I'll come on top of this with some warmer greens. I like to have a variety of warm and cool greens. And the purple areas are the areas where you can see into the branches. So I want to have little bits of that remaining in the painting. I'm actually having fun with this, but it is getting cold. I debated whether or not to bring a jacket with me up here. But I knew that the hike I would generate a lot of heat climbing up this hill. And I thought, okay, I'll be fine. The sun is out, it's warm, and now it isn't anymore. There we go. Actually, that shape there is a little bit, let me break that shape up a little bit. There we go. All right, so now I'm adding bits of warmth to the greens. I actually like the color of this, the greens that I've got here. I think it sort of accurately represents the color that I was seeing, but I want to put some bits of warmth in here as well, especially in the foreground. So I'll have cooler greens in the distance. In reality, the distant greens are about the same color, but I do want to create a sense of depth. And I do want to add some warmer areas, warmer and darker areas out on, you know, where this sand is. And I'm not sure if that's red enough. I think that'll be a good place to start. And I'll add some warmth to the trail here as well. Actually, that shadow is a little too light in value. So I'm adding some dioxazine purple to the mix. I don't like my shadows to be so dark that you can't see into them. I want it to dip down like that. Okay, I like that. So I'm adding bits of cooler green out in the distance here. And I may just leave this trail the color that I've got it right now, which is kind of a cool, almost a purplish color. Alright, so here is the finished painting. This painting took about 2 hours to complete. I did finish it on site, even though I was tempted to bring it home and finish it just because it was so cold outside and I was working from memory anyway. But I did force myself to finish on site, and I'm glad that I did. It was really helpful actually to have the scene in front of me, even though the light was completely different. I felt pretty confident that I could get the colors and values in the foreground and in the trees and also in the clouds. The big challenge was the water. I wasn't sure that I'd be able to get the color and value of the water to read correctly without seeing it. But I remembered that it was sort of a blue-green in the foreground with ultramarine or even a purplish tone right at the horizon. As for the clouds, I really tried to keep the value of everything in the sky very light and yet go for maximum saturation. So that can be a challenge, but I wanted to have a cerulean sort of color in the background sky down low and then more of an ultramarine up top, and yet not have that value be too dark. And then also the dark portions of the clouds, the sort of gray areas, I wanted that to read as shadow on the clouds, but again, not to be too dark and heavy. All right, hope you guys enjoyed this video. Let me know what you think in the comments. If you'd like to see some extra videos and help support the channel, there's a Patreon link down below. It's the Patreon support that helps keep me making these videos, and it's much appreciated. So check it out. Other than that, stay creative, and I'll see you guys in the next video.